One of my favorite things to do is watch movies. I'm pretty flexible on the genre. Now, if it has good reviews or a good word of mouth, I am in. But I do have one pet peeve about some movies. I am not a fan of stories that don't provide a backstory for the main characters. Backstories are critical. They help us to better know a character, to understand their motivations and why they do what they do. A great backstory will tell us both the good and the bad parts of somebody's life. And context is essential to making sense of what's happening at any given moment. Understanding somebody's backstory helps make their story more complex, interesting, and compelling. A good backstory on the past can help you understand why something is happening in the present. But every once in a while, a backstory isn't introduced in the best way possible. Like when the dad is in the middle of a chase to find his daughter's kidnappers, and suddenly the movie flashes back to a scene where he and his daughter are arguing in the kitchen. When that new scene is inserted in, you might think, wait, what? What does this have to do with anything? And chances are you've probably already felt that way just living your own life. You're rolling along, living your life, and then a moment is thrown in and you find yourself asking these same questions. What is happening? What's the point of going through this? Now, we usually have this response with difficulties, with pain, struggle, problems, the things that will be a part of our backstory one day. But for now, they're in our current story. And when we're in the middle of them, they can seem to be pointless. Painful, but pointless. It's rough. And for the past few weeks, we've been talking about this question. What do you do when you don't know what to do? Today, we're talking about what to do when people hurt you, or a loved one passes away, or you experience a major illness. Your divorce catches you by surprise. You find yourself struggling with a kind of dependency. In other words, the heavy stuff, the painful stuff, the real life stuff. But before we ask ourselves what we should do, we often ask ourselves, why? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? Why is this happening now? Difficulties can feel random, pointless, or unnecessary. Sometimes we see the point in hindsight when it's part of our backstory. For example, maybe you have a broken friendship, but looking back, you realize that the friendship led you to make some bad decisions, and you may not have liked that version of yourself very much. So even when it felt awful when the friendship fell apart, you're now grateful that it happened. Maybe you didn't get a job, which was extremely frustrating. But during the pandemic, that position was laid off. You would have been out of a job if you had it. Sometimes we do see the point of our pain in the moment, while the difficulties are actually happening. Maybe in the moment you did understand why that relationship was unraveling, but most of the time, unexpected pain and challenges seem pointless. And unlike the movies, our difficult circumstances usually don't get a pretty bow tied on them as we walk through them. We may not experience the outcome we had hoped for on the other side of our pain. In those times, it can be really difficult for us to see any point behind our pain, to find hope despite the hurt, or to find the determination to keep going despite the difficulties. But when we find life to be confusing or difficult, we can actually learn what we can do by looking to people who have gone through similar situations. By looking at the backstory of people who experienced some tremendous and unexpected hardships, like Joseph. We've been looking at the life of Joseph. Here's a brief recap of his story so far. Joseph was sold by his own brothers. He was taken to a foreign country. He was falsely accused of doing something he didn't do and was thrown into prison. Now, if anyone had earned the right to ask, what's the point? Why is all of this happening to me? It was Joseph. And that's where we pick up today. Joseph was in jail for a crime that he didn't commit, and then his story took a truly unexpected turn. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Now there's a lot going on here, but it's interesting to note that even though Joseph was in jail, he continued to honor God. So the men told Joseph their dreams, and with God's help, Joseph told them what they meant. So the men told Joseph their dreams, and with God's help, Joseph told them what they meant. Then what Joseph said would happen, happened. Based on the dream of the chief cupbearer, Joseph said the chief cupbearer would be released from prison and restored to a favorable position. And he was. And for the chief baker, Joseph said he wouldn't be so lucky. And he wasn't. Given what Joseph had done to help the cupbearer out, you would assume the cupbearer would tell Pharaoh all about the guy he met in prison who could interpret dreams. But that's not what happened. Instead, the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. He got out of jail and went on with his life, and Joseph continued to serve as sentence for something he didn't do. Now, it's possible that Joseph reached an entirely new level of despair after this incident. Wouldn't most of us think, wait, wasn't there a reason for all of this? What was the point of interpreting the dream? Has God forgotten about me? I thought I did what was right, yet here I am, still in jail. Now, fast forward 2 years. Pharaoh had 2 dreams that troubled him. He desperately searched for someone on his staff who could interpret them, but no one could. And that's when the cupbearer remembered Joseph. So Pharaoh called for Joseph, who correctly interpreted the dream. And as a result, eventually Joseph was made second in command of all of Egypt. Only Pharaoh was more powerful. And not only that, under Joseph's leadership, Egypt survived a terrible famine, which eventually put Egypt in a position to save Joseph's family and people from his homeland who were suffering from the famine. But it's not like Joseph's life instantly improved after he did the right thing. It was 2 full years before the cupbearer even remembered Joseph. Even when Joseph was promoted to a position of incredible power, he was still living in a foreign land. It wasn't like Joseph was now able to go home as a free man. Joseph was still under Pharaoh, which meant that if Pharaoh was having a bad day and decided he wanted Joseph dead, he could snap his fingers and make it happen. So no, this turn of events did not make Joseph's life perfect, not even close. But when we see the big picture and understand the backstory, we see that Joseph's challenging circumstances uniquely positioned him to do something great. That doesn't mean that all of the good things that happened in Joseph's world made the bad things that had happened to him okay. Being promoted to second in command didn't undo the challenges he faced leading up to that. But those difficult circumstances positioned him and prepared him for something great, something only he could do. Hard things will happen in life. And most of the time, we'll search for some kind of meaning to those things. It's also important to remember that just because something happens doesn't mean it was something God did to you or wanted for you. Because of sin, things happen that aren't fair, that don't make sense. People hurt each other. But when it seems like it's impossible that anything good can come out of a situation, remember this: God is really good at doing the impossible. Listen to this amazing statement from the Apostle Paul. We know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose for them. It may not seem to make things completely better, and it may not even make sense yet, but God is in the business of taking our hurt and our difficulties and our pain and redeeming them again. That means even if something was done in evil and meant for evil in our lives, God can and will use it for good, not only for us, but for others. When you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. This doesn't mean we'll always understand the why behind every bad thing. It doesn't mean everything will be fixed and go back to being how it was before that bad thing happened. But it does mean we can leave room for God to tell a new story through our circumstances. It means we can have confidence in God's ability to redeem things. It means we can know that good can come from bad. It means that the bad stuff doesn't get the last word. Tough times aren't the end of us or of our story. Instead, they could be part of something more. So when we go through pain and we can't see the purpose yet, these two truths can expand your perspective and offer you hope. First, no one else has your life story. Your difficult circumstances aren't fun, but they're unique to you. They put you in a position to learn and to grow and discover things no one else can. God is using your tough stuff in ways you can't imagine because they're shaping you in ways no one else has been shaped. That reality may not make it easier, but it can give you perspective or a way to see things differently. Then, know that your story can help others. Although no one else has your life story, many people do face similar circumstances, and you could be a voice to help them through their own challenges and pain, something you wouldn't be able to do if you hadn't already gone through it yourself. So, when you go through family drama, it will enable you to help people who are going through family drama. When you go through a divorce, it will give you the empathy to understand how someone else feels when they're going through a hard divorce. When you deal with a sickness or illness or injury, it will teach you how to encourage people who are going through the same thing. When you've had big doubts and questions in your faith, the questioning will help you be a safe place for people who are asking questions of their own. You can become a person who looks around, sees other people's struggles, and says, "Oh, you feel that? Me too. Oh, you've experienced that? I've been there. Let me walk with you in this a while. Can I share what I've experienced and what helped me?" The truth is, the next best thing to having something fixed for us is having someone who understands and walks along our mess with us. That's why we believe in small groups like the one you're in. The people in your group have been through all kinds of situations and difficulties. Chances are, whatever you're facing, someone else has a similar backstory, which means they'll get you. And having people who get us can make all the difference during tough times. Joseph went through pain that felt pointless. But when we see his backstory, we see that God used his problems to position him for a purpose. God took his impossibly bad situation and used it to create unimaginable good down the road. And we'll talk about more of that next week, but for now, know that he is doing the same with you. What if you believed that God is taking your pain and your struggles, those things that don't make sense right now, and is using those things to position you for something amazing that you haven't even imagined yet?